So I want to start off first by saying I read a post on Facebook today. Okay, I know most of y'all been on Facebook here and there, but Jacob was a cheater, Peter had a temper, David had an affair, Noah got drunk, Jonah ran from God.
Come on, sir.
Paul was a murderer, Gideon was insecure, Miriam was a gossiper, Martha was a warrior, not like a mighty warrior, but a warrior, always bothered. Thomas was a doubter, Sarah was impatient, Elijah was moody, Moses stuttered, Zacchaeus was short, Abraham was old, and Lazarus was dead.
All right.
He uses broken people to do big
Come
things.
on, sir.
God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called.
That's right,
So I stand here in front of you saying I am far from being qualified to speak on anything. And as Pastor Jesse called me and asked if I'd share a few things, in my mind I wanted to say, "Are you sure?" But I had a vision in my mind of Pastor D last Sunday. Right? So, you know, for those of us that are walking in this life called Christianity, we're called to be ready in and out of season.
Come on, sir.
Not to mention we never know when and where God is going to show up.
That's right.
So I didn't want to miss this opportunity to have God work in me and through me to share a word or two.
That's right.
You see, we're called to live this life together in a relationship. And you can't have a one-way relationship.
Come on, sir.
God's pointing to each and every one of us daily, and we're called to reciprocate that, daily pouring onto one another. And as I sat for like about the 1 hour that I had for preparation and prayer, and I wrote all this stuff, and it's there, but I now know what you're talking about when God changes your mind on what to speak. You know, I think it's pretty good too. Really, my notes from the guy here. And I'm probably impressed some folks in here with how I can put together some stuff on paper. But really, what I want to do is share what's in my heart about what I've learned with the men's ministry. Okay, and it's starting to reveal to me. God is starting to kind of line up all the puzzles. They're not all there. I don't see the perfect picture of a puzzle. Just imagine having a jigsaw puzzle and you got one piece, and every day you're putting that one piece where you think it goes. And after some time of being in the Word and being connected vertically with God, you get to realize what your vision is. So for some time, I've had my own personal struggles. And studying the book of Nehemiah, I realized that he wasn't in the Word, he was away from the Word, and he received a report. He received a report that his city was in ruins. Has anybody received a report, a bad report, maybe a report from the doctor, maybe a report that your son decided to go live with his mom that you've raised since he was 4 years old? The one thing I wish I would have known or done is been in the Word and have had to study during my time of when I received the bad report. Nehemiah demonstrates what a true spiritual leader, a godly leader, is supposed to do. And the very first thing he does after he receives the report is go into fasting and prayer. See, there's no situation that's too big that God cannot handle. We're called to cast our worries, whatever situation you're going through, whether it is this small or this big, onto the Lord. So instead of fasting and praying, the flesh took over, took a hold of me. And many a nights, my wife can tell you that she was worried. That I chose poorly, I lived a life of bad behaviors and poor coping mechanisms to dull the pain. And while the pain was dulled temporarily, the issue was still there.
Come on, sir. Come on, brother.
So late at night, no one around, Marines are tucked off in bed. Here is what's supposed to be their leader in their room tearing it up instead of praying it up.
Come on now.
Come on, brother. Good. Good.
It took quite some time to realize that my behaviors were not right. They weren't in line with what God had intended for me in my life. And the enemy had me by the foot as I'm sitting there dragging along day by day, trying to make it. Now, even through all this, I still managed to worship. Like the song that you talked about, that you preached on there. Worship. Had my music going, still drinking. Gotta be like Saturday noon, if that. And I'm sitting there and I look over at the table and I see this a pile of cans, a pyramid of cans. And it was at that time I kind of went over there and gave it a little backhand and I said, enough. Enough was enough. And I chose, instead of that behavior, instead of worshiping and drinking, I chose to worship and run. So that's what I would do. That's where I would start off. Now I ain't gonna lie, there was some stumbles here and there. All right, but I stand here humbled.
All right, sir.
And then being able to speak out to probably 2/3 of y'all I don't really know that well. But I know one thing. We all share something in common. And that's His love and His mercy.
Come on, brother.
So Nehemiah was like 800 miles away. And I was like 3,200 miles away. So that bad report of the city being broken down was my own home being broken down. And my regrets as a leader of Marines was not going to my leadership saying, hey, I need help. It wasn't going to my true leader saying, God, I need help.
That's good right there.
Man, you know, if I knew what I know now, what I knew then, right?
Yes.
You know, it's through this great fall that I realized, you know, how close I was to letting the enemy defeat me, to strip away my family. And I refuse to let that happen. Most of you ladies in here know Shannon's testimony and Latora's of their father. And I refuse to be that man in my house. I owe my family better. I owe God better. I've got more to give than what's being demonstrated here. So the first step, as the pastor was talking about, Pastor Jay, was that sheep gate. And we just kind of walked through that sheep gate together. And that's building that relationship, connecting that relationship.
Amen.
And that's where it first starts. It starts being able to connect that relationship, going back to God, leaning on His wisdom and not your own understanding.